Alright, so I wanted to make a video about Invisible Yoshi mechanics, because even though Invisible Yoshi itself is sort of a well-known glitch, it's not generally understood at a deep level or used in very interesting ways, and there's a lot of subtleties to Invisible Yoshis. So first of all, Invisible Yoshis occur when there's more than one adult Yoshi loaded in the level at a time. Normally, when you hit a Yoshi block, the egg will hatch a 1-up if there's already a Yoshi loaded somewhere to prevent more than one Yoshi. But if you spawn 2 Yoshi eggs before the first one hatches, then they'll both contain Yoshis instead, allowing you to get 2 Yoshis in the level simultaneously. This can be done by duplicating Yoshi blocks. Let me try to do that real quick. Ugh. There we go. So since both eggs loaded before the first one hatched, they both contain Yoshis, and you'll notice that one of the Yoshis is invisible. So only one Yoshi is visible at a time, and I'll call it the real Yoshi, and the rest will always be invisible. There's only 2 here right now, but you could in theory have more. Not only that, but invisible Yoshis have strange properties. So there's actually only 2 or so key differences between the behavior of invisible Yoshis and real Yoshis, but they have a lot of implications. So one is that invisible Yoshis don't follow underneath Mario when he's riding them, and the other is that invisible Yoshis don't change Mario's state when he mounts them. In other words, the invisible Yoshis don't move while mounted, and Mario doesn't get elevated by them. So the best way to understand invisible Yoshis is to look at real Yoshis. So when you're mounting a real Yoshi, you'll notice that Mario goes from his normal state to this sort of like straddled state where he's riding on Yoshi straddled to the side or whatever, like he's looking to the side. When he's in that state, he's sort of elevated to give the illusion that he's on Yoshi's back. And Yoshi also teleports beneath Mario on every frame to give the illusion that you're controlling Yoshi instead of Mario himself. And you can sort of break this illusion if you can manage to get Mario in this state without him actually riding a Yoshi, so I'll show you what that looks like. If I can do it. It's kind of hard. Come on. Come on. There we go. Alright, so you can see that Mario is now in his, like, elevated straddling state. But Yoshi isn't below him. And while you're in this state, Mario is shielded from damage, so you can see that, I can't get hurt by this Koopa. What else? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes off to the side here. I made notes for this video so I wouldn't get too far off track. Anyway, his collision and his hitbox also changes when he's in this state. He can stomp enemies into dust, like that. And he can walk on munchers. Also, while in this state, going into a new room will give you a Yoshi, a real Yoshi on the other side. Also going to the overworld, like if you beat the level or start select or something. Not if you die, but if you like leave the level in some other way. Then yeah, that'll give you a real Yoshi. And then the other thing you might notice is I can kind of go right through enemies without getting hurt like this. That's because when Mario's riding a real Yoshi, instead of Mario himself taking damage, the game uses Yoshi's hitbox for damage instead. So in other words, running into an enemy while riding Yoshi hurts Mario, or sorry, it hurts Yoshi, but not Mario. And since Yoshi isn't actually below me, he can't get hurt by anything I touch. In fact, Mario's hitbox is mostly unused while he's in the straddle state. A good demonstration of this is bonsai builds, so let me go back over here, grab the Yoshi. I can grab these, it doesn't really matter. Whoops, didn't mean to fall in that hole. Oh my god, twice in a row. Okay, So, I'm gonna go ahead and just turn on the Lua script for this so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, I need to change the capture so you can actually tell what's going on. Alright, so, okay, you can see 3 hitboxes here. Well, you can see more than 3, but just pay attention to Yoshi's hitbox, Mario's hitbox, and the Bonsai Bill's hitbox. And you'll notice that the Bonsai Bill just passes right over me. And I'm not doing anything glitchy here. I'm literally just walking in front of him. You've probably seen this happen in Yoshi's Island 1. If you bring Yoshi into that level, this is pretty common. So you don't have to duck or anything to go under this guy. And the reason is that if you look at the hitboxes... Come on, this one. There we go. If you look at the hitboxes, the Bonsai Bill does overlap with Mario's hitbox. Mario's hitbox is the red rectangle, the Bonsai Bill's is the green. You can see they're overlapping. But it doesn't matter because the Bonsai Bill never touches Yoshi's hitbox. You can see it goes just over the top of it, the blue one. So, since it uses Yoshi's hitbox for damage, and Yoshi is the one that gets hurt, you never actually get hit by the Bonsai Bill. So, oh, let me scroll down on my notes. So for some reason the game actually does use Mario's hitbox for damage with enemy projectiles, like hammers, baseballs, and fire from the fire pillars from the Sumo Brothers Lightning. Basically extended sprites and cluster sprites, but let's avoid that terminology for now. So, for example, this guy's fireballs use Mario's hitbox instead of Yoshi's, but they still damage Yoshi directly. So what I mean by that is that if you look at this, you see that little like white pixel on the fireball? That's the fireball's hitbox. It's 1 pixel. And when it touches Mario's hitbox, the red hitbox, you can see that Mario instantly dismounts the Yoshi, and the Yoshi starts running away. So basically, enemy projectiles use Mario's hitbox instead of Yoshi's for Yoshi's damage. So Yoshi's the one that takes damage, but Mario's hitbox is the one that detects the damage, if that makes sense. There are actually some things that can damage Mario instead of Yoshi directly. So when you're riding Yoshi, most things will just knock you off of Yoshi, but some things will actually damage Mario. For example, the side of Munchers. So let me... So when you're in this state, you can see that if you walk into the side of Munchers, it still damages Mario directly, and you don't get knocked off Yoshi. There's some other things that damage Mario directly while you're riding him, or while you're riding Yoshi as well. Like, Mega Moles, what else? Dino Torch's fire, the fire that they breathe. There's some other things, I think, but anyway. So you can, there are some, basically, to sum it up, there are some things that most things use Yoshi's hitbox and hurt Yoshi so he runs away. Some things damage Mario's hitbox but still hurt Yoshi so that he runs away. And some damage uses Mario's hitbox and hurts Mario so he shrinks or dies. Anyway, when you're riding a real Yoshi, pressing A to dismount does 3 things. It causes Mario to teleport to Yoshi's Y coordinate and launch upward to give the illusion that you're sort of jumping off of him. It makes Yoshi inherit Mario's X speed, his horizontal speed. In other words, kind of flinging him forward, flinging the Yoshi forward. And it changes both Mario's state back to normal and Yoshi's state back to unmounted as well. So in other words, if I jump in the air and press A, or even if I'm on the ground, if I press A to dismount, you'll notice that Mario, if you look at Mario's hitbox... Oh, I didn't press A. There we go. He sort of teleports. He actually teleports to Yoshi's Y coordinate. Even though Yoshi's supposed to be right under him anyway, so it seems kind of unnecessary for him to teleport. But he does. He teleports to Yoshi's Y coordinate. And that's how it works with a real Yoshi. But it also works that way with invisible Yoshis, and I'll get to that in a minute. The other thing that happens is that he inherits Mario's X speed. So if I jump forward and press A, he sort of kicks Yoshi forward, and Yoshi gets flung forward like that. So Yoshi basically inherits Mario's X speed when you jump off of him. And then the last thing that happens is the Mario returns, like, leaves the straddle state and goes back to his normal state, and Yoshi goes back to unmounted. He goes back to his idle state. So anyway. So back to invisible Yoshi properties. The cool thing about invisible Yoshis is that they don't follow Mario around. Let me get an invisible Yoshi real quick. Okay, let me switch to cape because I don't want to destroy my shell. Okay, there we go. The cool thing about invisible Yoshis is that they don't follow Mario around when you're riding them. Which means they stay in place wherever you mounted the Yoshi. So you can see, if you look at the invisible Yoshi's hitbox, it's not moving with me. It just kind of stays there where I mounted it. And you can see when I'm not riding it, it bounces idly up and down, and then when I am riding it, it gets stuck there. Also, Mario's state doesn't change when you mount the Yoshi. Like, you'll notice Mario's not in his straddle state right now. Which means you can mount other Yoshis at the same time. Since Mario's state hasn't changed, he's not shielded from direct damage, and his hitbox and his collision are normal. Like, I can't walk on munchers or turn enemies to dust anymore. So, yeah, there's that. And what else? The Yoshi's still considered to be mounted right now, so any damage source that comes in contact with the invisible Yoshi's hitbox will force him to start running, and Mario will teleport to his Y coordinate as if he was just knocked off Yoshi's back. So like that. So as soon as I move to the right here, there's going to be a Koopa that spawns right in front of where the Yoshi is. So I just move a little bit to the right. A Koopa spawns where the invisible Yoshi is, and it damages him because he's considered to be mounted right now, so he's vulnerable to damage. So he gets hit by the Koopa and runs away. So you can see there's like weird things like that, the invisible Yoshi still behaves like a normal Yoshi, but he just doesn't follow Mario around. So everything that happens to him sort of happens from where he is. It's kind of interesting. And there's some fun stuff you can do with that. So, and the other thing to mention is that when he takes damage... Whoops. Okay, I need to rewind. I need to save state more. When he takes damage, you also teleport, just like when you press A. So, you'll notice that when I move forward here, right here, Mario teleports upward to the invisible Yoshi's Y coordinate. So, and that also happens if I press A. If I press A right now, right here, Mario teleports upward and dismounts. So basically you can use the invisible Yoshi to sort of teleport. You can use him to teleport through the floor like this. Or you can use him to teleport through the ceiling like this. And, yeah. You basically... It's a free, like, teleport jump, basically. It's sort of like a mid-air jump with Yoshi, except it always starts at the same altitude, so you kind of get, like, an extra boost from it. So invisible Yoshi jumping is pretty well known and pretty fun. But there's some other stuff you can do. So since the hitbox of the invisible Yoshi doesn't move where Mario moves, it's still stuck wherever Mario mounted him. And when it takes damage, it'll run from that spot instead of where Mario is. Pressing A will still dismount the Yoshi, and it teleports Mario and drops or flings the invisible Yoshi in the direction Mario's moving when he dismounts. So, it's worth noting that dismounting doesn't change Mario's X coordinate, only his Y coordinate. So yeah, you can teleport through floors and ceilings. Since invisible Yoshis don't follow Mario, one way to move them around is to continuously mount them and then jump and dismount to fling them forward. So, for example, if I mount this Yoshi and then press A to dismount, he sort of inherits my X speed, and I can kind of kick him forward every time I dismount. And you can see he kind of inches across the ground. Depending on where I mounted him in his idle animation, he'll be higher up or lower down. And I can kind of move him around like that. It's a little bit tedious to move an invisible Yoshi around like this, but because they don't follow you around, that's pretty much what you have to do. The other thing you can do is have them take damage, as I showed before. If he takes damage, he does move around, and I can mount him again to stop him. Like that. So that's another way to move the invisible Yoshi around. Give me 1 second. Scrolling down through my notes. Okay, since hurting invisible Yoshi is a good way to move him around, I should mention that there's an easy way to hurt an invisible Yoshi. For some reason, spinning shells don't hurt invisible Yoshi, so if I mount this invisible Yoshi and get a shell... Shell. Where's the shell? There's the shell. Jeez. Okay. So if I mount this invisible Yoshi, and then I kick a shell at it, it doesn't get hurt. For some reason, invisible Yoshis don't interact with spinning shells. So you can't just kick a shell at it. But what you can do, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate this with the real Yoshi first, is if you have an item in Mario's hands, it can actually damage Yoshi while you're riding him. So you normally can't pick up an item in Mario's hands while you're riding Yoshi. Like, I can't pick up this P-switch in Mario's hands because I'm mounting this Yoshi. So, but what you can do is you can do a glitch, which lets you do that. I need to spawn this P-switch in a lower slot. Not a higher slot. Come on. I guess I can do it with the key over here. So, it's actually really easy to do it with the key. Because the key's hitbox is taller, so you can just do this. Okay, so you can see that you can carry an item in Mario's hands while riding Yoshi. And you can also do this with a shell. So, whoops. Don't want to go in there. You can also do this with a shell. And I feel like I'm running out of shells. What happened? Let me go back to a different save state, one that's more usable. Okay, I need cape. Come on. You can also double hit a block like this to get 2 Yoshis, which is what I'm trying to do. There we go. Alright. So, yeah, I'm gonna demonstrate this with a real Yoshi first. So I need to spawn... Oh, the P-switch already loaded. I don't need the P-switch, I need a shell. Okay, there's a shell right here. Perfect. So, where do I set this up? That's not a good spot. I'll do it right here. Getting too close to the munchers here is probably bad, though. But... Alright. Alright, there we go. So, what happened here is I mount the Yoshi and grab the shell in the same frame. Yoshi actually has some invincibility frames when you first mount him. So nothing happens right away. It happens like a few frames later. But after a few frames, Yoshi takes damage and runs away. And all I did was hold the shell in front of him. So just holding a shell, when the shell is in its like carried state, it causes damage to Yoshis. So, you can use the same principle on
invisible Yoshis, but the difference with invisible Yoshis is that so it works with shells, throw blocks, Goombas, bombs, what else? Buzzy beetles, I guess. So it's not just shells, but some items don't work and some do. Anyway, so invisible Yoshis don't change Mario's state. So you can actually just freely grab the shell after mounting the invisible Yoshi. And basically, you can freely pick up items while the invisible Yoshi is mounted, and you can hurt a mounted invisible Yoshi just by touching it while carrying a shell. So literally all you have to do is this. You just touch it with the shell, and it runs away. So you can't use a kicked shell, you can't throw the shell at it and kick it like that. You have to touch it with like a carried shell, or have an enemy collide with it. An enemy with like an active hitbox. So anyway, I mentioned that invisible Yoshis don't change Mario's state when you mount them. And since they don't, you can mount multiple Yoshis at once. Sorry, give me 1 second. My controller is being bad. Okay, so you can mount a real Yoshi and an invisible one. For example, like this, mount an invisible Yoshi and a real one. You can mount multiple invisible Yoshis as well. I'll go ahead and show that as well. Let me get... Okay. Why didn't that work? That looked like the right frame. There we go. So you can see I'm mounting several invisible Yoshis at the same time now, and I can fling them all to the side. Yeah, you can do lots of stuff. If you press A, it dismounts all the Yoshis that you're riding. So you can see I'm not riding all the Yoshis right now because there's still one bouncing up and down. But all the ones that I am riding, when I press A, I dismount all of them. And if I mount them all and then press A, so it dismounts them all at the same time. If you want to dismount one at a time, you have to use damage. You have to have them take damage. So for example, let's say I want to dismount the one in slot 6, but I don't want to dismount the other ones. If I press A, I'm going to dismount all of them, but if I have this one in slot 6 take damage, I can dismount that one without dismounting the other ones. So you can kind of pick them out like that. Like, pick that one out. Ugh. Okay, well that got all of them. But anyway, the other thing to mention is that... Whoops. Okay, well, I guess we're doing this again. The other thing to mention is... it's not really a good spot to demonstrate this. I'm gonna wait for the P-switch timer to run out. There we go. Okay, so the other thing to mention is... Oh god, where did this Koopa go? Please tell me he's not... Okay, good. So this Koopa is gonna hit those Yoshis, and you'll notice that even if I'm riding a real Yoshi, I still teleport upwards, as if I got knocked off the other Yoshis. So basically you can get knocked off of invisible Yoshis while still riding a real Yoshi, and you can bring the real Yoshi with you when you teleport, which is pretty cool. Because if you press A, you can't teleport while you're riding the real Yoshi, since you just dismount from where you were, so you can't. That's the only way you can teleport while riding a real Yoshi. Okay, what else? So, how does the game decide which Yoshi is the real one? The general rule of thumb is that the last Yoshi to spawn is the real one, but that's not always the case. it's really the Yoshi in the lowest ranked memory slot is the one that's real, and all the other ones will be invisible. There's a byte that keeps track of which Yoshi is real. It's 18DF, I have it written down here. So let me go to RamWatch 18DF, and I'm gonna call it Real Yoshi. Alright, so if you look in the upper left corner, there's a byte that says Real Yoshi equals 2. So you can see that the Real Yoshi right now is the one in slot 1, obviously. It's the one I'm writing. But the byte says 2. The byte always reads 1 more than the value of the Real Yoshi, so if the Real Yoshi's in slot 1, it'll say 2. If the Real Yoshi's in slot 5, it'll say 6. If there are no Yoshis loaded, it'll say 0. That's basically how the byte works. And that byte is actually the reason there's only one Real Yoshi at a time, because the byte only has one value at a time, and each Yoshi that spawns updates that value, but it gets updated by the lowest ranked Yoshi last, so that's the value that sticks in the end. You can see that when I kill off one Yoshi, which I'll demonstrate in just a second. So you can see, like, if I throw some of these Yoshis around, when I dismount one Yoshi, the next one in line spawns, namely the next lowest slot. So I despawned the one that was in slot 1, so the new real one is the one in slot 2. It goes by the order of their rank, basically, or their slot number, if you prefer that. So the next one will be 3, and then the next one will be 4, whoops, and then 5. There we go. Okay, so basically that's how it works. You can see that when I kill off one Yoshi, the next one in memory becomes real. So what happens if you're writing an invisible Yoshi when it becomes real? So if you're writing an invisible Yoshi when it becomes real, let me demonstrate that. Okay, so let me save state. So I'm gonna Alright, that should be good. So I get him nice and close to the hole here. Then I'm gonna despawn this Yoshi. Oh, that's not the next one. That's right. It's this guy. Number 2. I need number 2. Just number 2. Okay. Okay, hold on. It's really hard to single them out sometimes. No. I need number 2. There we go. Alright, so number 2 is the next one to turn real. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna despawn this Yoshi and land on number 2. And no, I landed on number 6 first. There we go. So what happens here is I mount the invisible Yoshi, and this is the one that's about to turn real. So what happens when you're writing the invisible Yoshi as it turns real? If you do that, if the invisible Yoshi is mounted when it turns real, then it actually teleports underneath Mario, and you can see Mario's collision box got bigger. It extended downward. So Mario's collision box gets bigger, he goes into the straddle state, and the Yoshi appears below him. And the collision box actually gets, like, pulled downward, so Mario gets, like, pulled through the floor. So it's kind of interesting. Basically, the Yoshi appears underneath him, and then pulls him through the floor. So you can get pulled through the floor, that's pretty cool. It's a little different than teleporting, I guess, and sometimes that's useful in, like, puzzle levels or something like that. So what's even more interesting than
an invisible Yoshi turning into a real one is a real Yoshi turning into an invisible one. Because when a real Yoshi turns into an invisible one, it goes into this weird state. And basically the Yoshi turns into what I'll call a Super Yoshi, for lack of a better name. A Super Yoshi is an invisible Yoshi that used to be real. And the cool thing about it is that it doesn't despawn, even if it falls off the level. So I'll go ahead and show you what I mean. I don't think any of these will work. I need to... Okay, I'm gonna mount all these guys. Okay, mount all the invisible guys. Use the shell to damage them. Get rid of them. Drop him in the hole. And then I'm gonna... let's see. I need to dupe this block. Wow, I'm having a hard time. Maybe I'm not close enough. That might be the problem. My goodness. There we go. Okay, so you'll notice that when I spawn these Yoshis, the one on the left is real right now. But as soon as the second one hatches, it's in a lower slot. It's in a lower rank. So it's going to become the real one as soon as it hatches. And you can see it switches over to being the real one. Now, the one on the left used to be real, but it turned invisible. So it becomes a Super Yoshi. And a Super Yoshi doesn't despawn. So now, if I throw this Yoshi into this hole here, it's just kind of... Ow. If I throw this Yoshi into this hole, if you look at the number at the bottom of the screen there, you'll notice that he never disappears. He just keeps falling forever. And he'll actually loop around the level eventually if you wait long enough. He'll loop from the bottom of the level to the top. But he's also moving horizontally, so he'll probably end up out of bounds when he comes back around. And I'm definitely not going to wait for that because it would take too long. But yeah, he's a Super Yoshi. So if a Yoshi starts real and stays real, then if a Yoshi starts out real and becomes invisible, then he turns into this like Super Yoshi that has this property that it can't despawn. If a Yoshi starts out invisible and becomes real, then nothing special happens, it just despawns normally. So real Yoshis just despawn normally. If a Yoshi starts out invisible, then it just despawns normally. But if the Yoshi starts real and becomes invisible, then it turns into the Super Yoshi. So another thing to mention is that when Mario's in the straddle state, all Yoshis in the level become Super Yoshis. And I'll show you what I mean. Get rid of that. Okay. So, none of these Yoshis are Super Yoshis right now because the lowest slotted one they all spawned at the same time. So they didn't start real and become invisible. So, for example, I'll show you that if I throw these guys in the hole, they're gonna despawn. If you watch the numbers as they fall down, they despawn as soon as they touch the bottom of the screen. So they're not Super Yoshis. But if I then get a shell, yes, a shell, and no, I can't use a shell, that's right. Well, okay, I could do this. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so there we go. Now they don't despawn. And the reason is that Mario is in his straddle state. When Mario's in the straddle state, none of the Yoshis in the level will despawn. They all act as Super Yoshis. But as soon as I dismount this Yoshi, as soon as I leave the straddle state, they'll all despawn. So if you look at the numbers in the bottom right corner, the number 5 and all the other numbers there, they're falling down forever. But if I press A to dismount, all the numbers will disappear. So basically, when Mario's in the straddle state, none of the Yoshis can despawn. They're all Super Yoshis. Let's see.
Oh, also... Hold on, let me look at my notes real quick. So I don't forget something. Did I forget something? No, I don't think so. So I think the reason that they did the reason that happens, the reason that when you're riding a real Yoshi, none of the Yoshis despawn, I think they didn't want the Yoshi to despawn below you if you get too close to the bottom of the level, because otherwise, like, you could imagine that the Yoshi would despawn if you got really close to the bottom of the level, it would just despawn underneath you, and the developers probably didn't want that to happen, so they made it so that if you're in the straddle state, none of the Yoshis despawn. So, anyway, that's probably why that happened. So, one strange anomaly is that if you're riding an invisible Yoshi and a real one at the same time, or multiple like this, and you go into a hole, and then you dismount below the level, as soon as you dismount, you'll notice that Mario teleports upward. But also, the real Yoshi despawns. So the next Yoshi in line is supposed to become real, right? And that's what happens. You can see Mario actually gets teleported upward to the Y coordinate of the invisible Yoshis, whichever one he mounted last. And he goes into the straddle state, and you actually see the real Yoshi below him for a second there. And then all the other Yoshis spawn, or sorry, what am I saying? The real Yoshi transfers over to one of the invisible Yoshis. And now none of the Yoshis are mounted. They're all bouncing up and down. There's none of them are stuck in place. But Mario's still in the straddle state. So basically, if you dismount below the level like that, you teleport upward, Mario gets stuck in the straddle state. If you press A to try to dismount, nothing happens. You just kind of spin around in place. So you actually can't get out of this state. You're kind of stuck like this. Well, there is a way out of the state. If you use an enemy projectile, like I mentioned before, because enemy projectiles use Mario's hitbox instead of Yoshi's. So that's one way to get out of the straddle state. And you'll notice that when I do that, it actually causes the real Yoshi to start running wherever he is, which is pretty interesting. Whoops, this is not the right save state. Okay, I'll just use this one. So yeah, the real Yoshi starts running when you get hit by the enemy projectile. And am I missing anything? I don't really know why this happens. It has something to do with, I guess first Mario dismounts the real Yoshi and it despawns. Then he teleports to the Y coordinate of the invisible Yoshi that you mounted last, or at least the one in the next lowest slot or something. Then he gets put back into the straddle state 1 frame later, but with the Yoshi you teleport to unmounted. So you end up in the state where all the Yoshis are unmounted, but Mario's in the straddle state, and you can't dismount, and I don't really fully understand it. I'd have to look at the code. I think it has something to do with like the order of precedence of how the events occur within a frame, like the order that things are processed. Anyway, so I've talked about the main things. Now let's get into some subtleties. Basically, it's kind of like they couldn't decide if they wanted Yoshi to be a regular sprite type, like the same type of sprites as Koopas and enemies and stuff like that, or if they wanted him to be his own sprite type. So he's kind of both, and as a result, some of his properties are global, and some of them are handled on a Yoshi by Yoshi basis. So obviously Yoshi's graphics are a global property, that's why only one of them is visible at a time. And some of them are handled, what am I trying to say? Obviously Yoshi's graphics are a global property, And this is again due to the bite at 18DF, the one in the upper left corner. But this bite also controls some other properties like the punch timer, the swallow timer, the egg laying timer, the growing animation timer, and the tongue hitbox. These things are universal properties, meaning they are shared by all Yoshis. So, the punch timer, what I'm talking about when I say punch timer is that when you... let me turn off the hitboxes real quick so you can see this better. Oh god, where is the window? There it is. Okay, so... oops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm having a lot of trouble here. Alright, none. So, when I press Y or X, Yoshi sticks out his tongue. But there's a little bit of a delay. If I press a Y or X, there's like a few frames where Mario kind of sticks out his hand and punches Yoshi. You might say he's pointing or something like that, but I like to think that he's punching Yoshi. Anyway, so there's this sort of animation of Mario punching Yoshi before Yoshi's tongue comes out. And that animation takes like 8 frames or something like that. And there's a timer that keeps track of that animation. And that timer is one of the global properties that are shared by all Yoshis together. So what that means is that, for example... well, before I talk about the punch timer, let me talk about the swallow timer. The swallow timer is the timer that ticks down when you have something in Yoshi's mouth. He's holding something in his mouth and he's preparing to swallow it. So the swallow timer is a global property, which means it carries over from one Yoshi to the next. So if I drop Yoshi in this pit, and then the next Yoshi in line becomes real, you'll notice that he also has something in his mouth because the swallow timer carries over into the next Yoshi. It's a global property, so it's shared. And when that happens, it's worth noting that the item that's in the new Yoshi's mouth is usually a null sprite, like a null slot item. And you can use that to kind of mess with the game's memory a little bit. There's some cool stuff you can do with that. The other thing is the punch timer will carry over to the next Yoshi in line. So you can actually punch one Yoshi and have another Yoshi react to it. So if I fall in the pit here and press Y or X right before I fall in the hole, and then I despawn the Yoshi by jumping off of him, then you'll notice that the punch timer carries over and it keeps ticking down. And then a few frames later, the tongue comes out on the next Yoshi. So basically, I punch one Yoshi and the other Yoshi sticks out his tongue. So the punch timer carries over as well. Let's see. So... oh, the other thing is that the punch timer also gets stored if there's no other Yoshis. So let me get rid of this Yoshi. Whoops. Okay. If I fall in this hole and press... oh, come on. If I fall in this hole and press Y or X right before... hold on. Okay. So I press X, I press A. Okay, so I stored the punch timer. So what happened is I pressed the button to punch Yoshi, then I despawned Yoshi, and what happened is the punch timer froze in place. So it starts ticking down from like 8 frames or whatever, and it stopped somewhere around 6. So there's still 6 frames left on the punch timer, and the punch timer is just frozen right now. It's kind of just stored in memory. And if I load another Yoshi, the timer will continue to tick down. So if I spawn a Yoshi from a block, the punch timer will keep ticking down as soon as the Yoshi spawns, and boom, he sticks out his tongue. And he actually sticks out his tongue during the growing animation, and it looks really silly. So you can store the punch timer like that and do some fun stuff. Yeah, I think that's everything with the punch timer. The egg-laying timer and growing animation timer are also interesting. So when I say the growing animation timer, I'm talking about when when Yoshi comes out of a block. This animation I was just talking about right here. So this growing animation, that animation also occurs when a baby Yoshi becomes an adult Yoshi. But anyway, so the growing animation, is interesting because both the growing animation timer and the egg laying timer are global properties, but each Yoshi updates them once per frame separately from each other in order of rank. So this means the timers actually decrement faster the more Yoshis you have loaded. And so I'll show you what I mean. So for example, if I spawn 2 Yoshis from the same block, so this is what the timer... Okay, get out of here. Go. Okay. No, I don't want to collect the coin. This is what the growing animation timer normally looks like. This is what it looks like if you spawn 2 Yoshis at the same time. If I can do it. Are there too many sprites? No? I think I did it, actually. And I wasn't paying attention. There we go. Okay. So, you'll notice that the animation is actually twice as fast. Because, both Yoshis are decrementing the counter, so it ticks down twice as fast. And if you have 3 Yoshis spawning on the same frame, it goes even faster. And if you have, like, 10 Yoshis spawning on the same frame... so, for example, if I do this... Well, this isn't a good example because I need to get rid of something here. Oh god, the stupid key. I hate this key. No, I need it to go in the hole. In the hole. There we go. Okay. There we go. So you'll notice that the animation is like 6 times as fast because there's 6 Yoshis. And this also happens with the egg laying timer. So normally when you lay an egg, so I'm gonna eat 2 pink berries here to cause a Yoshi to lay an egg. You can also eat 10 red berries. You'll notice that there's a little delay. Like when you eat the berry, he kind of stops in place for a split second and then lays the egg. So there's a little timer that ticks down. And that egg laying timer also gets decremented multiple times if you have multiple Yoshis. So I'll go ahead and do that here. Oh, fun times. There we go. So I've got 4 Yoshis here now. And you'll notice this time when I eat 2 berries, it goes by a lot faster. It's kind of hard to tell. And you'll also notice that he didn't lay an egg. That might be because there's too many slots full. I think it is. But even if I get rid of this guy, I think it would still happen because... well... Yeah, anyway, it does speed up the animation. So, whichever Yoshi was the last to update the egg-laying timer when it reaches 0 is the one that lays the egg. So actually, you can have a different Yoshi laying the egg. No. How do I want to show this? Okay. So I'm gonna toss all these guys over here. Alright. So now, I'm gonna eat this guy. Get rid of you. Alright, so watch this. Okay, you'll notice that one of the invisible Yoshis laid the egg instead of the real Yoshi, which is kind of interesting. You'd expect the real Yoshi to lay the egg. And the reason that happens is that the timer for the egg laying animation is 32 frames long, I think. And that means that because every Yoshi is decrementing the timer on every frame, whichever Yoshi is the last one to decrement the timer when the timer is 0, or whichever Yoshi decrements the timer from 1 to 0 is the one that lays the egg. So in other words, since the timer is 32 frames long, it's going to be the Yoshi with the rank equal to 31 mod the number of Yoshis. That's the one that's going to lay the egg. So in other words, for example, let's say you have 3 Yoshis loaded. They would be 31 mod 3, which is 1. So the Yoshi with rank 1, in other words, the highest ranked Yoshi, will lay the egg. Or in this case, we have 4 Yoshis loaded. So in this case, it's going to be 31 mod 4, which is 3, I think. So it's going to be the Yoshi with rank 3. And right now the Yoshi with rank 3, the one in slot 5 is rank 1, the one in slot 4 is rank 2, and the one in slot 3 is rank 3. So it's going to be the one in slot 3 that lays the egg. And you can see the egg comes from the guy in slot 3. So, it's kind of confusing, but it depends on how many Yoshis you have loaded, basically. If you have 4 Yoshis loaded, you get one result. If you have 5 Yoshis loaded, you get a different result. And you have to pay attention to their rank. So, anyway, kind of interesting. Just a little bit of math stuff. So some of Yoshi's properties, on the other hand, are handled separately for each Yoshi. Obviously, there's their position and their speed and their hitbox. Those are all tracked separately. And their mounted flag and their running flag. But also their tongue position and their linked slot. The linked slot keeps track of which slot corresponds to the item that's currently in Yoshi's mouth or on his tongue. And their tongue position gets reset when they take damage and gets stored when they turn invisible or touch lava. And you can use this storage effect to lick or swallow unlickable things. You can also do long distance item swaps with a persistent sprite, or you can store a spit stun. So, let me demonstrate that. Okay, so what I need to do here is I need a shell, which I may have destroyed it. I may have swallowed it. Yes. Okay. Let me go to a different save state. Do I have any... Okay, this'll work. So. Whoops. I probably want to keep that. Whoops. I didn't mean to go in that pipe. Okay. Oh, gosh. So, I actually want to get rid of that shell, spawn that. Okay. So, I'm going to use this key. First, let me burn this guy. Okay. So, what I'm going to do here is switch my feather. What I'm going to do here is dupe this Yoshi block to the right. And then I'm going to try to get the shell on the first Yoshi's tongue before the second Yoshi spawns. It's kind of hard to do. Okay, that was too high. I don't want to dupe it upward. Okay, yeah, it's pretty tricky. That should have worked. I don't know why the cape hitbox didn't hit the block. There we go. This should work. So. Okay. So if you look closely at what happened there, Yoshi sticks out his tongue grabs the shell starts getting pulled back to Yoshi's mouth, but then the second Yoshi spawns and becomes the real Yoshi, and this guy becomes invisible. It interrupts the licking animation, and the shell just falls down because his tongue is no longer active. But his tongue's position is still stored, and the linked slot is still stored. So, the linked slot for the invisible Yoshi right now is slot 7, which means that whatever's in slot 7 will appear on his tongue when this Yoshi despawns. So I'll just use this guy. So, whoops, don't want to do that. Okay, so if you look at what happens there, the real Yoshi falls in the pit, and as soon as he does, the other Yoshi becomes real. His tongue reappears where it left off, and the shell teleports back onto his tongue, just like nothing happened, right? But what's interesting about this is this happens even if the shell gets destroyed. So even if I destroy the shell, whoops, oh my god. So I destroyed the shell, the real Yoshi despawns, his tongue picks up where it left off, and now there's a shell in his mouth. Even though I destroyed it, it comes back to life. I revived it. So, not only that, but if you destroy the shell and then replace it with something else... okay. This is a bad example. I need to wait. Okay, I need to... Okay. Okay, this should work. So I'm gonna destroy the shell and spawn this vine. And you'll notice that the vine disappeared because it teleported to Yoshi's tongue. So you can see he swallows the vine head. I wish I timed this differently so that I could actually get an interesting result here. There we go. Okay, I managed to get it to actually spawn some vine tiles below it so I can climb on them. Okay, the other thing you could do is, well, yeah, let's do a long distance item swap. So let's get rid of this. And then we're gonna... I don't want that. Alright. Okay, watch this. Whoops. Okay, look carefully. I spawned a keyhole, and now... item swap. And he swallows the keyhole. And if I move forward, I can actually activate it before he swallows it. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing you can do is you can store a spit stun. So, let me get a different save state, I guess. Alright, let's destroy that. So what I'm gonna do is the invisible Yoshi's tongue is still out, right? It remembers where it left off. But if I damage this Yoshi, say with the Koopa here, then it cancels his tongue. So his tongue is no longer out. It got interrupted. It got, like, stopped by the damage. So, now his tongue is no longer out. Now what I'm gonna do is grab this guy, take damage, and then... whoops. Okay. I need to jump so I'm not getting pulled through the floor. And now, I can spit out the Piranha Plant. Because the Piranha Plant's in slot 7, which is the link slot. So... I'm gonna wait until he comes back down. And it spawns a springboard. Yay! So you can do some fun stuff with that as well. Alright, the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go get another shell. Unless I'm out of shells, I might be out. No, I got one here. Perfect. Alright, let's go in this pipe. Alright, so for my final trick, I'm gonna combine a whole bunch of stuff together here. I gotta set something up. So, I'm gonna strategically position a bunch of... Well, okay, the first thing I need to do is I need to create a Super Yoshi. So, I'm going to set this shell down. These are both Yoshi blocks, just for the record. I'm gonna kick this, and I need to do this just right to spawn a Super Yoshi. I need a Super Yoshi in slot 1. Oops. There we go. Okay, I got a Super Yoshi in slot 1. So... let's see. So now I need to... Okay, I'm gonna get the shell again. And I'm gonna save... Actually, let me move this guy. Alright, now watch this. Nope. Let me actually switch to my feather so I don't destroy the shell, because I need it. Whoops. Come on. I'm trying to mount just one at a time, which is really hard to do. Okay. Oh my god, I need this guy. Alright, so I'm gonna move this guy over. I told you this was tedious. I guess I could use the shell again to move him. I think I want this one a little bit further left, actually. Alright. Is that gonna be good? I think so. Okay, so I'm gonna hurt you. Oh, I need you. Stop. Move. Ugh. Oh god. Okay. Now I need to mount every Yoshi. All the invisible ones. So you notice that the Yoshi in slot 1, I made him a Super Yoshi by making him real before, like, I made him real before he turned invisible. So he's a Super Yoshi, he won't despawn. Now what I'm gonna do, I didn't think this through. Actually, that's fine. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is null slot corruption here. I need to get a null slot in Yoshi's mouth. Okay, there we go. And then I'm gonna wait. I think I want to wait till right about now. Oh, I didn't make it. Okay, let's try that one more time. Boom. Alright, that was fun. That was worth the setup. So what happened there, I should probably explain. I used null slot corruption to turn the Yoshi in slot 1 into a damage source. Unfortunately, a side effect of that is that he becomes vulnerable to despawning off screen. But because I made him a Super Yoshi, he didn't despawn. And so I got around that. And so basically, he turned into a running. He was running around, but he acted as a damage source to all the Yoshis, so that he just kept knocking them down one in a row, or like dominoes, basically. That was fun. All right, I think I'm done for now. That was a long video, so I'm gonna stop. But thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Hopefully you learned something, or hopefully you didn't fall asleep. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day. Bye!